The morning sun cast long shadows across Meadowbrook Estates as Margaret Pierce stood at her bay window, binoculars pressed against her thick-rimmed glasses. As HOA president for the past 12 years, she'd made it her sacred duty to monitor every lawn, every mailbox, every blade of grass that dared grow a millimeter too tall. But today, something was different. Terribly, horrifically different. "Gerald!" she shrieked, her voice cracking like thunder. "Gerald, get in here this instant." Her husband shuffled into the living room, coffee mug in hand, newspaper tucked under his arm. "What is it now, Margaret? Did the Johnsons paint their shutters beige instead of cream again?" Margaret's hand trembled as she pointed across the street. "Look, just look at what that woman has done." Gerald squinted through the window. There, in the previously pristine front yard of number 42, stood a garden gnome. But not just any garden gnome. This gnome was at least 4 feet tall, painted in gaudy shades of purple and gold, with a fishing rod in one hand and what appeared to be a tiny beer mug in the other. It wore a Hawaiian shirt that would make a tourist blush, and its grin seemed almost mocking. Is that Carol's yard?" Gerald whispered, the newspaper slipping from his grasp. "That woman has gone too far this time," Margaret hissed, already reaching for her phone. Section 7, subsection 3, paragraph B clearly states, "No lawn ornaments exceeding 18 inches in height shall be displayed without prior written approval from the HOA board." I'll have her compliance notice ready within the hour. What Margaret didn't know was that Carol Henderson had been planning this moment for 3 years. 3 hours later, Carol sat on her porch swing, a glass of sweet tea sweating in the afternoon heat. She was a woman in her mid-50s with silver-streaked hair pulled into a messy bun and laugh lines that spoke of a life well-lived. The garden gnome, which she'd affectionately named Big Larry, stood proud and tall beside her azalea bushes. The sound of clicking heels on pavement announced Margaret's arrival before Carol even looked up. "Mrs. Henderson." Margaret's voice could have frozen fire. She clutched a manila folder to her chest like a shield. "I assume you're aware of the violation you committed?" Carol took a slow sip of her tea, her eyes never leaving Margaret's. "Good afternoon to you, too, Margaret. Lovely day, isn't it? Don't play games with me. That monstrosity violates at least 4 HOA regulations. I'm prepared to fine you $500 per day until it's removed." "Is that so?" Carol set down her glass with deliberate calm. "Tell me, Margaret, did you happen to read the original HOA charter? The one from 1987, when this neighborhood was first established?" Margaret's perfectly penciled eyebrows knitted together. "Of course I have. I've memorized every regulation." "Then you know about the grandfather clause," Carol said, her smile widening. Section 2, Article 5. Any resident who lived in Meadowbrook Estates prior to the 1995 regulation amendments is exempt from lawn ornament restrictions, provided they were original homeowners. The color drained from Margaret's face. "You're not. You couldn't possibly." "My late husband and I bought this house in 1986, Carol continued, pulling a weathered document from beneath her tea pitcher. "We were the 3rd family to move in. I have the original deed right here. We predated your precious amendments by 9 years." Margaret snatched the paper, her hand shaking as she scanned the contents. Her mouth open and closed like a fish gasping for air. This is impossible. You moved away. You sold this house to the Martins in 2004. "We rented it to the Martins," Carol corrected. "We never sold. My husband and I moved for his job, but we kept the house. And when Tom passed last year, I decided to come home." She gestured to Big Larry. "And I brought a friend." Margaret's face had progressed from pale to crimson. "I'll challenge this. I'll take it to the board. You do that, Margaret. In the meantime, Larry and I will be right here, enjoying our constitutionally protected lawn space." By sunset, the neighborhood group chat was in absolute chaos. Susan_42. "Did anyone else see Carol's gnome? I'm dying, faced with tears of joy." Tom_Patterson. "Margaret just posted a 2,000-word essay in the official HOA channel about maintaining community standards." Rachel_, "I'm ordering a gnome right now. I don't care if I get fined." Margaret_Pierce_, this is not funny. If we allow one violation, the entire neighborhood would descend into chaos. Tomorrow emergency board meeting, 7 p.m. sharp. Carol_Henderson. Looking forward to it, Margaret. Larry will be there in spirit, Purple Heart. Margaret read Carol's message 3 times, each reading making her blood pressure spike higher. She'd ruled Meadowbrook Estates with an iron fist for over a decade. She'd forcing Gwen family to repaint their house twice because the blue was too vibrant. She'd made old Mr. Peterson tear down his grandson's treehouse because it exceeded the maximum structure height by 4 inches. She'd fined the Patel family for having their trash cans visible from the street for 37 minutes past the allowed time. And now, this woman, this Carol Henderson with her ridiculous gnome and her grandfather claws, was making her look like a fool. Margaret didn't sleep that night. She sat at her computer, scrolling through decades of HOA documents, searching for any loophole, any clause, any technicality that could save her authority. The emergency board meeting drew a crowd of 43 residents, the largest turnout in Meadowbrook history. Margaret stood at the front of the community center, her presentation loaded on the projector behind her. Order. I will have order, she barked, banging her gavel. We are here to discuss a serious threat to our community's values. You mean the gnome? Someone called from the back. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Margaret's jaw clenched. This is not about one gnome. This is about precedent. If we allow Mrs. Henderson's violation... It's not a violation, Carol said calmly from her seat in the 3rd row. We established that yesterday. I'm not convinced your documentation is legitimate, Margaret shot back. I've filed a formal request with the county records office to verify. I brought copies for everyone. Carol stood, holding up a stack of papers. Original deed, title history, and a notarized letter from our real estate attorney confirming continuous ownership since 1986. I also included the full text of the grandfather clause you seem to have overlooked. She walked down the aisle, distributing papers as she went. Margaret watched in horror as residents began reading, nodding, even chuckling. This is ridiculous, Margaret sputtered. The board will vote to challenge this interpretation. Actually, said David Kim, the board treasurer, I think Carol's right. The language is pretty clear. David, Margaret whirled on him. You can't be serious. I am serious, Margaret. And honestly, he looked around the room at the assembled neighbors. Maybe it's time we relax some of these rules anyway. We live in a neighborhood, not a military base. Applause erupted. Margaret stood frozen, watching her authority crumble in real time. Furthermore, David continued, gaining confidence, I move that we review and amend our current lawn ornament restrictions. They're outdated and excessive. Second, called at least a dozen voices simultaneously. Margaret's vision blurred. This couldn't be happening. Her HOA, her rules, her perfect neighborhood, all unraveling because of a purple gnome. This meeting is adjourned, she shouted, grabbing her papers and fleeing to the parking lot, leaving chaos in her wake. The following week, Big Larry gained 3 friends. The Johnsons installed a family of concrete ducks. The Patels added a small Buddha statue to their garden. Even mild-mannered Mr. Peterson placed a subtle stone turtle by his mailbox. Margaret's complaint inbox exploded with notifications, all of them residents voluntarily reporting their new lawn ornaments with thinly veiled glee. By Friday evening, Margaret sat in her living room, staring at a piece of paper. It was her resignation letter from the HOA board. Gerald sat beside her, his hand on her shoulder. You don't have to quit, he said softly. Yes, I do. Margaret's voice was hollow. They voted. 87% in favor of amending the lawn ornament restrictions. They don't want my leadership anymore. Maybe, Gerald hesitated. Maybe they never wanted this version of leadership. Maybe they wanted a community, not a dictatorship. Margaret looked at him sharply, then slowly, her expression softened. Tears welled in her eyes. When did I become this person, Gerald? When did I start caring more about rules and people? I don't know, love, but it's not too late to change. 2 weeks later, Carol sat on her porch swing when she heard footsteps approaching. She looked up to see Margaret standing at the edge of her driveway, holding something wrapped in newspaper. "Mrs. Henderson," Margaret began, her voice uncertain, "I wanted to apologize for everything. The way I treated you, the way I treated this neighborhood. I thought I was protecting property values, but I was really just—" She trailed off. "I was just controlling everything because I was afraid." Carol studied her for a long moment, then gestured to the empty seat beside her. "Sit down, Margaret." Margaret sat, placing the wrapped object on the swing between them. Carol unwrapped it to reveal a small garden gnome, no more than 8 inches tall, painted in gentle pastels. "I thought," Margaret said quietly, "maybe Larry could use a friend, if you'll have him." Carol looked at the little gnome, then at Margaret's face, really looked at her, and saw not the tyrant HOA president, but a lonely woman who'd forgotten how to be a neighbor. "I think Larry would love that," Carol said, her voice warm. "What's his name?" Margaret smiled for the first time in weeks. "Gerald Jr." As the two women sat in the cooling evening air, the neighborhood around them buzzed with life. Children played in yards decorated with personality and joy. Neighbors chatted across fences without fear of violation notices. Someone's wind chimes sang in the breeze. And in Carol Henderson's front yard, Big Larry the garden gnome stood guard, his purple and gold paint gleaming in the sunset, his ceramic smile as wide as ever, a 4-foot monument to the day one woman's small act of rebellion freed an entire neighborhood. The HOA would never be the same. And that was exactly how it should be.